All right. Thank you, Jimmy. And welcome to the Unified CXM Experience. This podcast has been a real joy. I've been doing this for almost a year now. We're at 150 episodes. I am your host, as usual, CXO at Sprinklr, Chief Experience Officer, Grad Khan. And today, I've got a special guest. I'm joined by Rob Harles. He's the global lead for modern and emerging channels for Accenture Interactive. And Rob and I had a chance to interact on another podcast for another group not too long ago. And we had such a good time. We thought, hey, why don't we just kind of continue the discussion and bring it over here to the Unified CXM Experience and sort of see what happens. So welcome to the show, Rob.
Well, thanks for having me.
You know, and I appreciate this Friday afternoon, another hot summer. I know it's tough, but really appreciate the time and the commitment to do this. So I think we want a couple things we want to cover today. The things that we've been chatting about a little bit, which is how do you really get your hands dirty on customer experience? You know, how do you really get in there and understand it? And I find people get almost so theoretical about it that they lose touch with the actual problem at hand. And then maybe are we over mechanizing and over digitizing this thing and making it so inhuman that people don't trust it anymore? And you've got a really funny story about the switch between humans and bots. We want to talk about that. I want to kick it off a little bit with a story that I've told before on a couple other episodes, but I think it frames this discussion really well because it's an interesting combination of digital and human. And it's so ridiculously simple that I almost feel like people wouldn't even think of doing it. But it was so incredibly powerful. And I have this company I bought a product from recently called Pedestal Source. And Pedestal Source, the only thing that Pedestal Source does is they make pedestals. That's it. You know, can you make a box? Nope, just a pedestal. Can you make a nope? Just a pedestal. They make pedestals. They make pedestals that people can use at trade shows, in art galleries, in homes, and people often will put displays on top of the pedestals. And some of the pedestals have got a kind of a glass top, so you can have light from below. Some pedestals are plain. They can be short and squat or tall. So there are different sizes of pedestals, but they just make pedestals. And so I recently acquired a piece of art. It's a very cool piece of glass that looks like a bag with a goldfish in it. I mean, it looks like a bag with gold, but it's made out of glass though. But what I found I had a problem is that everyone who came over to my house, when they saw this fairly expensive sculpture, they were desperate to touch it because it looked really approachable. And it's reasonably fragile. And so I thought I need to put this on a pedestal so that people will be less likely to touch it. So it looks more like art. And so I found Pedestal Source. I bought an underlit, because it's glass, it looks beautiful, an underlit pedestal, and placed the order. And it was quite a nice process. Everything went really well, and they were very friendly in their emails back and forth, and it was excellent. I paid my money and then kind of sat back. Then I started getting emails from them. And this is just an email campaign, so it's nothing overly fancy in terms of modern channels. But I started getting emails saying, we're on it, and we're working on it, and it's coming soon, and this is when you should expect it. And I was like, well, this is kind of nice. I feel really connected. They seem to be all over my order. I'm not worried that they've forgotten about me. And it was like a reasonable amount of money, so it was nice to have that, sort of reinforcement of the connection to the sale. And then I got this really interesting email, which was, your pedestal is ready. See it here. So I opened the email, and there was a link to a YouTube video. So I click on the link, and I open a YouTube video, and the YouTube video is Melissa. And Melissa is standing on the shop floor at Pedestal Source in her work clothes, like, overalls and stuff like that with, safety glasses and everything. And she's just finished making my pedestal. And she's basically, it's like an iPhone video, and it's like, hey, I just finished making your pedestal, and I just wanted to show it to you. I'm really excited about it. I feel really good about it. Did a really nice job. It's looking great. And I want to show you that's 11 and a half inches and 11 and a half inches by 42 inches. And she had an actual tape measure, and she was showing, in real time, and you could see it in relationship to her. And so you saw your pedestal that she had just made and was going to ship to you. And she said, it's going to be shipping in the next couple of days. And I just wanted to thank you for ordering from Pedestal Source. And it's been really a real pleasure making this for you. And I was like, wow, like that is like the greatest experience I've ever had with the product. And but it's also very clever because these things are expensive to ship and probably non-trivial to try to ship back. And she was essentially reinforcing the size so I could see my pedestal. And if I had any issues, here's my chance. So she didn't say, this is your last chance or anything, but clearly, I mean, if I had an issue, I'd be able to react immediately. But I could see the whole thing. I could see the color, the way it was built. I could see the person that built it for me. It was very, very, very cool. The pedestal arrived a few days later. I set it up. It's perfect. It's amazing. It's great. But the pedestal is more than just the fact that the pedestal is a thing that works. It stands in the corner and has a light on it. It's a relatively simple piece. It's a piece of wood, right? It's a relatively simple sort of architecture. But the fact that they did all this other stuff in the between has made that pedestal so much more interesting. And as I think about customer experience and all this stuff that people talk about and all the implementation and this system and that system and this system and here we want to do this and that and this, I think, I don't know, how hard would it be just to hey, I just packed your box. Here's all the stuff that's in it. It's on its way. Let me know if you have any problems. My name's Grad. Something powerful there. So anyways, just wanted to start with that story. And I think it links a little bit to your idea about being more human and, are we over digitizing stuff? And obviously they're using digital transmission with email, but there's something very, very non-digital about the way they did this. So let me throw it to you for a second, get your reaction.
No, but I think that's a great story because it was digital. They used all kinds of ways to connect with you, but the most important part of this, to your point, was they made the human connection, right? They actually showed you where they were with what you had contracted them to do. They showed you who was working on it, so you get a sense of how much pride there is in the work and craftsmanship they put into it, and then you also got a lot of confidence that, okay, it is actually done and it's coming to me and it looks great. I can't wait. Plus, now you have a story that goes with it. So there's a value add that you wouldn't get anywhere else.
Yeah. And this is like Pedestal Source, right? The thing that maybe the thing that weirds me out the most is, I'm not trying to run down their company. It's obviously an awesome company and they're clearly very successful, but if a company that makes wooden pedestals can figure this out, and I don't know who came up with this, somebody super smart over there did this, then why can't I get this with my car?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't understand. I'm paying a lot more money for my car, and I don't get even a tenth of that. Why, when I finish a service call, instead of giving me a text saying your car is ready, why don't I get a quick video from the mechanic saying, hey, just finished going over the whole car, looking good. I wanted to show you this little thing here, but this looks pretty good. All of this is totally possible, right?
It is. I had I think a similar story, a good one, around design. I think I might have talked to you about it, but it was, we were thinking of renovating our place, and I love this stuff, number one. So that's a little bit, that gives you, I love design. So I'm a little bit more high touch than your average customer. So that could be good and bad, right?
Yeah, I think that's mostly bad, by the way. Mostly bad.
I'm told that, that I'm paying them to tell me this, that I'm not so bad.
Okay, that's fair.
But I do appreciate it. I appreciate what people put into it, the thought. I love design. And in the past, right, if you want to do this, I'm not great at things like what color goes with what texture, all that kind of stuff. So I can appreciate it and immediately see something's good, but I can't really always tell you what should be going with something. And so, you might end up with something that's just very blah. So that was the starting point. And normally, in the past, I think we've used, maybe hired a designer or maybe, if it's really tough, an architect. But in the past experiences of those, I've not really found that they've been any more, accurate or better if I, pay them $500 or I paid them $5,000. It's still a little bit hit or miss, right? It's hard for someone to really get who you are and not try to push all their stuff on you, but at the same time strike the right balance. So I went online a couple of years ago, and I was sort of looking around, and I found this thing. I was trying to think about this too, because I was working with a client who was looking to do some of this work, and I was like, "What? Who does this design stuff online? And is it collaborative and all that?" And I found a startup at the time, which was called Modsy. And I don't know if I told you about that, but it was really interesting.
No.
And what they basically...
How's that spelled? How's Modsy spelled?
Modsy.
Modsy. Gotcha. Okay.
And you go in, and the premise is, hey, we're going to make this a lot simpler. Okay, I'm listening. And the thought was, it's hard to figure out, your rooms and what goes with what, and you might like certain things and other things don't go with it. You might have things you want to keep, but we don't know if you put new stuff with it. Well, we're going to make that a lot easier, and we're not going to charge you a bunch of money for it. We're going to create your room. You just give us the photos, and we'll tell you exactly where to take those photos and how many. And then we're going to ask you some stuff. We'll do a little I call it a psychographic test, which is what are the things you like, what are the things you don't like. Do you they show you photos, or you can upload your own from Pinterest or Instagram or anything like that. And I thought, oh, that's nice. Now they're collecting things. And then, what colors do you like? And it's not just, I like blue. It's, do you like warm colors? Do you like cooler colors? Do you like bold colors? And they get all that. And, you pay them, I think it was like at the time, it was like $199 for a couple rooms. And what they promise to do is recreate your room as it is, and then come up with a couple of different options for what, by working with a designer based on the things that you just told them that you really like. And sure enough, and it's great because they do the same thing that your pedestal company is doing. Like the minute you submit everything, they're communicating with you in some fashion. We thank you for the photos. We're going to get back to you today. If we need anything else, we're going to have someone look at them. And if you need something, they come back to you in email, or they text you like, hey, I could use an extra photo here. And then you do that, and they say, okay, in the next 48 hours or 3 days, your designer's going to be in touch. They're going to come up with your preliminary design, and then you can work with them. You can chat with them. You can set up a call with them, or we can just do this all remotely and virtually. And because they set this thing up in high def in their space, and because it's completely customizable, you can interact with anything that's in that room. So they'll put stuff in, but if you say, I don't really like that chair, I like that kind, you can drag and drop something else into it. And then it'll tell you what the difference in cost is.
Sounds amazing.
And it puts it in his personal studio too. So all your stuff that's in that room that they put in based on things you're interested in. If you said you like CB2 or Crate and Barrel or Design Within Reach or something else, that's where they're pulling these things from. All that stuff is, as it goes into your room and into your studio, it's like your own mini catalog. It's your own website, basically, where you can look at stuff, change things, look at the price, and whatever else. But they don't stop there. They sort of they want to get you to buy that stuff because I believe the model is that they get a certain percentage of the sales they originate off that. And but you're not paying extra for it. You're only paying that flat fee, and you're only paying the best price. So one of their promises to you is taking the pain out of all this is buying something from, say, a Crate and Barrel, only to have it done, come down in price 3 weeks later, and then you're like, oh man, I should have waited. Their guarantee to you is if anything happens within that first few months where the price goes down, we'll notify you the price has gone down, and we'll get the refund for you. So we did that. And honestly, I wasn't expecting much to come out of it. But they came up with great designs. The person we worked with, they were really flexible. They didn't care how many iterations, how annoying you were. It was like, Well, yeah, that looks good. Oh, we'll change the color on the background here. Sure. And I'm sure it wasn't all digitally automated. I'm sure that a lot of this was, like your example, a heavy dose of manual labor. But they made the math work, and more than that, and we ended up buying about 3 or 4 rooms worth of new furniture and rugs and stuff based on that, because I didn't have to deal with anything going wrong.
That sounds amazing. I am totally going to try that because I'm in the middle of a bunch of interior design myself.
Yeah. So
It reminds me a little bit of FrameBridge. FrameBridge is at a sort of smaller scale, but they frame stuff.
right.
But framing's very, it's like all sorts of different ways of doing things, and they're very good at kind of going back and forth until you get it exactly right. I had kind of a tricky piece I had to do recently, and they did a great job on it. But the same idea feels very customized and I think what we're talking about here in both cases is that it's like the product itself is delivering the customer experience.
Sure, because it changes that experience from being a bit of a drudge. Like, I used to have to go around and look online and go into the store and talk to a bunch of people and then look at swatches, but they aren't really the whole thing because that chair was in blue or this one, the swatch is in red, and it was a chore, right? I just couldn't see the entirety of the arc of my shopping experience. But what they did was they looked at the arc of a person's shopping experience of redoing a room and said, okay, let's look at it end to end and let's get all the friction out of that. That was, I think, what they did. Let's get all the friction out of that. Let's try to be as absolutely helpful as we can afford to be, and be very communicative in that process. And the result is, I think, a lot of people will buy. So yeah, and then we talked about the antithesis of that, which is, I think I was joking with you. I think maybe in my old age I'm getting cranky because I've now, I watch my own experiences with like an eagle eye. And like, well, man, when I start documenting these things, like, how bad was that?
Well, you've got less time, right? So you got to be more worried about how things go. Things have got to go more smoothly because you don't have much time to waste.
I don't have time to wait in line for this.
Yeah, man, time's ticking. I'm more than half done. Come on, let's go.
But I think it's because also, I deal with these clients. Like the companies I patronize are more often than are my clients, and so I have to be a little bit careful about being dismissive or critical. But I really try to be helpful. But the one thing I think I've decided that is really important, which I think is a big missing these days, is being able to put yourself in the shoes of the customer. Right, walk that mile. That's what those personal experiences teach me. So whenever I can, I try to actually, before we do a strategy or hand something over, I try to actually go, okay, let's do a sanity test here. I'm going to be the customer. I'm actually going to buy something from you. I'm not going to expensive. It's something I probably need, but I'm going to do it, and I'm going to, good, bad, or otherwise, I'm going to document everything that happens. And it's amazing how eye-opening that is. Because it actually stops me and my group sometimes from emphasizing the wrong thing. Like, clients may come to us and say, I really want to automate this, or I really want to build a better experience around this. But more often than not, when we're looking at it, it's with this sort of framework around making the experience better for ultimately the company, the brand, versus how do I really make the experience much better for the customer? Like, I'll make it better for them if it gets my bottom line. Like, no. How do you make it much better?
And what's interesting about what you're saying, and I love the way you're talking about this, because this is actually, we're almost rediscovering something that we used to know. It is a bit of a funny thing about marketing, maybe even in business a little bit too, but certainly in marketing, is that no one remembers the past and no one really studies the past. And my brother's an organic chemist, and he's working at the fringes of the most advanced technology in biotech today. He's just like, he's at the most itsy bitsy, like it's just so unbelievable what he's doing in terms of genetics and all the stuff that they're working on. But he also knows the periodic table of elements. Like, right? He's not like, Who needs to know that old stuff? I mean, that's still important. Whereas I feel like in marketing and advertising, we forget the periodic table. We never learn it. There's a great book called The Art of Writing Advertising. I don't know if you've ever read it. It's a sort of McGraw-Hill kind of advertising classic. It's an interview by a guy named Dennis Higgins. And he interviews David Ogilvy, Bill Bernbach, Leo Burnett, Rosser Reeves, who invented the whole point of the idea of USP, and George Gribben, who my dad worked with when he was at Y&R. And in there, Leo Burnett talks a lot about what you're saying. Leo Burnett talks a lot about walk a mile in your customer's shoes. Try to understand the way the customer uses the product. Use your client's products. Someone once asked Leo Burnett, he would always wear suits from Sears, because Sears he was based in Chicago, right? And Sears was a really big client. So, and Leo Burnett was an extremely wealthy man near the end of his life, and he could afford to buy a suit anywhere. But he always wore suits from Sears, and he always smoked Winston cigarettes. And Winston were a fine cigarette, but not the top of the line cigarette. He could afford a better cigarette, but he smoked Winston cigarettes, and he ate Green Giant frozen peas, and like he used all the things that he sold. And someone said, why don't you just smoke a better cigarette and buy a better suit and eat fresh vegetables? And he's like, I just find that profit tastes better. So I love that, but that is something people have forgotten, and I don't know why.
Well, I think it goes back to, I was telling you about this, I think the last time we talked, which was at least a hypothesis, which is being a historian, I always gravitate towards history, and I always think about, well, what was it, before the 20th century, before mass advertising and large corporations, and we ultimately you boil it down, we were a nation or nations of shopkeepers, and it was very hard to go and to scale those, right? So you would probably know most of your customers, and they would know you, good, bad, or otherwise. And the best ones would probably make it their business to know their customers, right? They would keep something back that just came in that they knew that their customers liked, or they would replace something without question. Others were less savory, no doubt, and tried to pass off bad meat for fresh. But in truth, you were limited by the number of people you could have in your commercial audience. And then you flash forward, and as we get in the 20th century, and things come together, and we conglomerate, and then sort of mass advertising erupts. It becomes all about economies of scale. Like, how do I run a massive business globally without I can't know my customer. I'm so far removed from them, like 15 degrees of separation, which is, it was a benefit in the sense of increasing productivity and increasing scale, and obviously reaching new markets in ways no one could possibly have done before. And there was enough momentum because the stuff was new that there was a high demand, right? It's like, I want McDonald's. Okay. Right. I want to know what this thing is. And but as that progressed, the further it progressed, the further and further away that we became, from our customers. And then we had to employ proxies for that. You have market research. You saw the evolution of that in Mad Men, right? We have to have statistical research about our customers. And then we'll segment them, and then we'll do some conjoint analysis, and then we'll come up with 2 or 3 segments that we think we can build a business around. But still, it's a snapshot in time on an abstract. And so, what's interesting now is that I kind of feel like it's historically come full circle, and it's come full circle because for the first time, truly, we have technologies that are two-way. We have our customers bleating about who they are, like a lamb bleating, right? I'm like this, I want that, this is who I am, this is what I respect and value. But as I always joke, even though we have all that, I always say if you're old enough to have watched, at least in rerun, I Love Lucy, and you saw the one where Viv and Lucy were in the chocolate factory working part-time on a conveyor belt, and the chocolates started fine, and then they all started coming faster and faster. And they started dropping on the floor, and they pushed them in their pockets and stuck them in their mouths, right? We can't keep up with all the data that we've got. And part of that is because we're just avaricious for data and not really thinking, okay, let's peel this all back to what it really matters, which is walking a mile in the customer's shoe, understanding who your customer truly is, what motivates them, what annoys them, and figure out ways, first and foremost, to hold on to them, right, before you get a whole bunch more. And that's where I think we are right now, which is we have this promise. We actually have the ability to do some of these things, but we don't do them because we're still got this sort of 20th century mass marketing, large conglomeration mindset that keeps us very disjuncted and separate and siloed. I joked with you, like, honestly, I don't see marketing going away. I just see marketing as everybody's business. Being a salesperson is everyone's business. If you touch a customer, if you talk to them, just like that person who made your pedestal, you probably would never talk to him, but now you know who she is.
Yeah, Melissa's in marketing too.
Yeah,
I mean, she makes pedestals, but like she was proud of it, and that made me excited about getting it, because I felt like the person who made it put some care and love into it, so it made me think about that pedestal in a very different way. Versus I probably would have assumed it came off some kind of anonymous production line. I wouldn't have associated it with a human being, and maybe I would have been more critical. I don't know. I mean, there's nothing really to be critical of, but it changes your mindset when someone presents something to you as, this is my thing. Do you like it?
Well, and what we said, right, time and time again, you said this, which is when we define what humanizing is, it's not some amazing new thing that we just came up with because the social scientists came up with it. It's the most basic fundamental thing that we have, which is we're very visceral, emotional creatures. We're social creatures. We don't like, we want to be able to trust people. And when we do, we probably trust them, almost for life. Same with brands. Same with anything. But if you shatter that trust, if you aren't transparent, if you push people away at a distance, if you treat them as though they don't really matter, they're just fodder for you selling more stuff. That's where I think we're rapidly coming off the rails. And I think the companies and brands and even governments that realize, how to make more intimate, I'm not even saying have to be one-to-one, but intimate connections with people, making them feel they matter. That's going to be what separates the wheat from the chaff.
We're going to take a break now, having a fantastic conversation with Rob Harles. He's the global lead for modern and emerging channels for Accenture Interactive. And we're going to be picking that up in sort of a part 2 in the next episode. So for the Unified CXM Experience, I'm Brad Kahn, CXO at Sprinkler, and I'll talk with you and Rob next time.